Okay, we'll let Bob sit back down here. Good evening, it's 7:15 and I call to order the regular meeting of the Victoria City Council. Our workshop ran a little late tonight, so we got a late start, but please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda tonight is announcements. All meetings of the City Council are open to the public and held in the council chambers at City Hall unless otherwise noted. If you're interested in speaking at a council meeting, we encourage you to contact our city clerk for more information. With that, council is anticipating a workshop on July 24th to discuss affordable housing, awaiting confirmation from the presenter. Prior to the meeting, we will be hosting a ribbon cutting for our new outdoor pickleball courts at the Victoria Recreation Center. That is going to happen at 5 p.m., and the public is welcome to attend. In other announcements, concerts in the park are in full swing and occur every Wednesday through August 9th. Visit the city's website to see the season's lineup. Night to Unite is right around the corner. This annual event will be held on August 1st from 5 to 8 p.m. Registration for a visit from the police or fire is now full. However, you can add your party to the waiting list, and if there's time in the evening, we'll try and have a crew swing by. To learn more about Night to Unite and add your neighborhood party to the waiting list, visit the city's website or reach out to our Communications and Public Engagement Manager, Kendra Grawl. For all our bicycle enthusiasts, the annual Tour de Tonka will take place on August 5th. Bikers will be riding through the areas of the city, so be aware and drive safely. This event is hosted by Minnetonka Public Schools, and I'm guessing you can still register to join the ride if you would wish. In addition, we also have a proclamation this evening, which is a proclamation to designate July as Park and Recreation Month. Whereas parks and recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Victoria, Minnesota, and whereas our parks, recreational areas, water access locations, and natural amenities is why Victoria is known as the City of Lakes and Parks. And whereas our parks and recreation programs are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas parks and recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreational services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the City of Victoria recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources, now therefore, I, Mayor Deborah McMillan of the City of Victoria, do hereby proclaim that July 2023 shall be observed as Park and Recreation Month in the City of Victoria, and invite all citizens to celebrate Parks and Recreation Month and support efforts to promote the parks and recreation programs in the area and areas in the community. This resolution is adopted by the City of Victoria and approved by this mayor on this day. Our next order of business is to adopt the final agenda. So, Council, I will take a motion to adopt the final agenda.
Motion to adopt the final agenda.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. On to our next item, which is open forum. Open forum is the opportunity for anyone to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda and not in application form coming to the council at a future date. Please do not expect action from the council this evening regarding your comments, but council members may ask clarifying questions. Open forum is not intended to be a back and forth discussion. No one has registered to speak in advance, but if there's anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda and not in application form, please step forward. Seeing no one, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are routine, administrative, and do not require deliberation, or are housekeeping items required by law. They're approved with one vote unless someone requests an item to be considered separately. Ms. Hardy, does staff wish to pull any items from the consent agenda for separate discussion and vote?
None from staff, Madam Mayor.
Council, anyone from council wishing to pull something from the consent agenda? Or anyone in the audience that would like to pull something from the consent agenda? Seeing no one, may I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Motion.
I have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to our regular agenda. The first item on the agenda this evening, 6.1, which is the final plat from Brooksmore 3rd Edition. Presenting this evening is our brand new city planner, Brian McCann. Mr. McCann, welcome. Brand new and shiny in your position.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Tonight we have a request for a final plat for Brooksmore 3rd Edition from Lennar. So a quick summary about the development. It is generally located southeast of Highway 5 and 13. It's approximately 34 acres in size, of which 25.7 acres are developable land. The total proposal for the entire development included 80 single-family homes, and it is currently zoned PUD with a R1 residential underlying zoning. So here is just a slide showing the major subdivision platting process and all the steps that are associated with that. So you can see tonight we have the request for final plat for the 3rd edition for the Brooksmore subdivision. They went through the sketch plat and neighborhood meeting process in January of last year. They received preliminary plat approval in May of last year. Their 1st edition received final plat approval in September of last year, and then second edition and PUD established for the 3rd edition as well was approved earlier this year. So here is the preliminary plat for the entire Brooksmore development. The western half of, or the western site of Cochia Lane was the 1st edition, and then the half of the east side of Cochia Lane was the 2nd edition, and the remaining parcels on the east side of that site are for the Brooksmore 3rd edition. Here's the final landscaping plan that was approved in September of last year. And then the 1st edition final plat, 2nd edition final plat, and then tonight's request, the 3rd edition for the remaining 30 lots of the development. And then the section of the landscaping plan associated with those 30 lots. So these are the standards that were approved with the PUD request for the 2nd and 3rd edition earlier this year. As approved, you will see in the top table the minimum lot areas, lot depth, width, setbacks, and impervious surfacing in comparison to what is typically allowed in our R1 district in zoning code. So with planning and zoning review, we reviewed the number of units compared to the density of the overall project, the landscaping and the tree mitigation efforts by the developer. We also look at potential buffers and berms, as well as parks and parkland dedication, trails, and sidewalks that are proposed with the site. And then the engineering review consists of final plat and construction plans, grading, drainage, and erosion controls, streets, utilities, and landscaping. So with the final plat tonight, staff believe it is generally consistent with the preliminary plat, and all conditions have been met or were met prior to city council approval for the preliminary phase. On the screen tonight, I have some conditions that are outlined in the approving resolution for Brookmore Third, including addressing to city's satisfaction, any staff review comments or engineering review comments. They must enter into a development agreement, complying with the PUD standards and the city attorney's plat opinion, submitting and recording HOA documents or covenants, recording the final plat, and providing the city with a Mylar copy of the plat.
Mr. McCann, quick question for you. I was remembering that there was no HOA involved in this one. Am I thinking about the wrong one?
No, I believe you're correct. That's a standard condition that has been applied through several other developments. So,
Okay, so there is no HOA associated with this
as
development.
far as I'm aware, no.
Thank you.
So a sample motion for you all tonight, a motion to approve Brookmore Third Edition with conditions as presented and discussed.
Perfect, thank you. I do have a quick question on the impervious surface, if you can go back to that slide. Remind me why we went to the 4,500 square feet versus 35%. Do we know the answer to that?
Mayor, off the top of my head, I do not know that question.
Okay. Ms. Brewington, you remember anything about that? Okay. I'm assuming we had some reason to do that, but I can't recall it off the top of my head. Council? Ms. Karen, you got anything?
Mayor, members of the City Council, not my area, but generally I believe that we were moving to managing the impervious surface for this neighborhood on a square foot basis instead of a percentage basis at the request of the developer to review, building permit review when they come in for patios and whatnot.
Okay.
That's all I remember.
Okay, thank you. Okay, very good, thank you. Council, questions on this? Go back to our motion here. This should look familiar to us. It's been before us a number of times, so. Any questions from council? Yeah, Councilmember Gunderson, please.
To your point on the 4,500 square feet, based on the lot sizes, that's almost over 50%. That opens up a can of worms, doesn't it? With other developments, because I've recently had questions from the community about impervious surface, and I'm concerned that we're at a point where this is gonna cause us to go down a slope we don't want to go down.
Ms. Hardy, thoughts?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Gunderson. I'm familiar with what you're referencing. And that particular neighborhood is also in a shoreline overlay district. So those requirements are a little bit different than they would be for this particular development. So this is very much outside of my technical expertise, so I'm kind of looking over across the room here.
Okay, so we think it was because of the shoreland overland district. That's starting to,
No, I think Ms. Hardy was referencing the last subdivision that we looked at had shoreland
The one that you're
overlays in there.
I'm referencing a specific homeowners asking for something, and the city's working on it. But then but now in any other that isn't in a shoreland district, that still is at 35%. We could still then run into, well, you approved at 50+%.
So
I'm just looking for specific reasons why. I remember having the conversation. I remember it being talked about. To your point, I can't remember exactly why we did this for this one. And I want to make sure that we aren't going down a slippery slope at 50+% before we approve this.
all right.
So
I am just gonna note that this is consistent with what's been approved for all of the other phases of the development that were approved, so I'm not entirely sure why the planning staff did that, but they did do it. But I do want to note that the stormwater management system is designed to accommodate the proposed impervious surface, the max impervious surface for each lot. So the infrastructure is being built to handle that additional runoff.
Okay. Well, just want to note that I want to just be covered. I don't want to be a double standard. I don't want there to be a double standard for some things versus others. And I want to make sure that we're covered on that. So we don't all of a sudden have neighborhoods going 50% all the time.
Right. I think Councilmember Gunderson brings up an excellent point. I mean, I think this dovetails in with our concerns about side yard setbacks and how those have been pushed and how we've sort of had a process of reining that in. If you recall, the last subdivision that we approved had 7.5-foot side yard setbacks because that was a compromise that we made because it was consistent with the rest of the development surrounding it. I do remember when I was on Planning Commission, much to the chagrin of the developer on this, that we pushed really hard to get them to 9-foot setbacks on this. And so there has been some interplay with those, but I think that it's fair that we can start to move in a direction where we maybe stay a little bit firm on where these impervious surfaces are coming up and side yard setbacks for things in the future.
Point well taken.
Just want to muddy the water. So I understand that we're at the phase. It's just the question has to be asked.
Yeah, fair point. All right, council, questions, comments?
I just have a question about Cochia. I'm just curious, that Cochia looks like it's pretty done. Is that when will that open?
Ms.
And will
Aaron,
this-
another one for you. We're keeping you hopping this evening.
Sure, Mayor, members of the City Council. I thought perhaps that question would come up today. City Manager Hardy has been out of the office, so it is on our agenda to review tomorrow. But given the nature of that road being a collector, we want to make sure that the construction that needs to occur within the road is complete. So we originally were going to wait to open it until the trail was paved, which I haven't been out there today. I know that was on the list here to get done. But staff actually has been talking about going ahead and having them put the second layer of asphalt on that roadway and complete all the outstanding striping so that we can just finish it and get it open versus opening it, coming back, and putting wear course down at a later date. So staff's been reviewing that. I just heard back from the fire chief today. To do that, we probably would be looking at keeping it closed to through traffic until the start of school. But what we talked about internally would be asking that they have that complete before school opens. I'm a little bit concerned just with the high school students that we want to have the work to a point where we won't have contractors trying to work in that area. And the large stockpile that's on the west side of Cochia just need to be hauled over to the east side, so that would also correlate with getting that work done. So I was going to review that with Dana tomorrow to see if she agrees with the direction that staff's headed, but that's what we're thinking right now.
Thank you. All right, anything else? All right, seeing nothing then, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve Brookmore 3rd edition with conditions as presented and discussed.
I have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item on our agenda, 6.2, is the final plat for Hunters Brook, 2nd edition. Again, presenting this evening, Mr. Brian McCann. Mr. McCann, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Tonight we have a final plat request for Hunters Brook 2nd Edition, formerly the Rolling Hills development from Tradition Development. So the final plat for Hunters Brook 1st Edition went through the appropriate routes as well. For sketch plat, they went through the process in November of 2021 for preliminary plat. They received approvals in April of 2021, and then they went through annexation in April 2021 as well, with final plat approval for the 1st edition from the City Council in 2021 as well. So they did initially apply for preliminary plat for a 2nd phase, which were separate parcels from tonight's request. That ended up being rescinded for a canceled planning commission meeting and was never followed through. And then tonight they are requesting Hunters Brook Second Edition to finish out the portion of the development that was approved at the preliminary plat stage, just for some background information for everyone. So Hunters Brook First Edition proposed planned unit development with R1 underlying zoning. Their first edition include 115 residential lots and 1 clubhouse for the subdivision. They have 3 distinct types of homes in their development, including tradition, heritage, and revere lots. Each one of those have their own separate PUD standards for setbacks and size and other things such as those. And then the final plat for that was generally consistent with the approved preliminary plat. So here you can see outlined in blue was the first edition for the 100 lots that were proposed at that time, and then tonight's request is the second edition for the remaining 109 lots. So just to highlight some of the conditions of preliminary plat approval from the City Council and how they've satisfied those in the first edition. So they satisfied township fees and the annexation was approved. And then council approved the planned unit developments for first and second editions areas, and then several other items were completed in the first edition as well. Retaining walls established as a responsibility of the HOA and the homeowners. Those were provided prior to recording of the first edition. And then a 4-foot tall white picket fence was also included for a portion of the northern property line, except in the far west steep slope area. And then applicant has addressed the Hunt Club representatives. Disclosures were provided in the first edition with full HOA and covenant documents. And then another item received in first edition as well for the development agreement, the letter of credit, and then obtaining any other regulatory agency approvals. And then title work has been submitted for the second edition and is currently in review with the city attorney. And then they also submitted the plat for first edition. So for their proposal tonight of Hunters Brook second edition, the PUD area was already rezoned with the first edition, so that has been established. They're proposing 109 residential lots, 21 of which are the tradition style, 48 are the heritage style, and 40 are the revere style villa lots. And staff has reviewed that the final plat is generally consistent with the approved preliminary plat. So here to summarize the standards for the tradition, heritage, and revere style lots. No lots in the second edition are along a collector road, so that fourth column or row is really just background information for what was approved in the first edition. We really are just looking at those first 3 rows for the types of homes that are in the second edition. And then all corner lot yards, side setbacks shall be 20 feet for the development, and the maximum impervious surface is 45% for tradition lots, 50% for heritage and revere lots. There was a clubhouse that was approved with the first edition. Really the only notable portion about this slide is that it can be used by members of the second edition. So any member in the development will have access to that clubhouse. And for park trail and dedication, this was satisfied in the first edition, but the parkland dedication fee is still required for second edition. Here you can see for the entire development, the types of trails that were approved. So you can see a lot of connectivity throughout the entire development. Then with the Schmieg Hilltop Farm, there's a portion over the northeast area that is applicable for the required fence for the second edition, where the portion of the land here. Tree replacement was also satisfied in the first edition, as well as finalizing the amounts for the contribution towards Highway 11 and utility oversizing. They will be required to contribute the necessary amounts for the second edition construction, but this is just noting that the contribution amounts were already determined with first edition. And then the lift station, which is been approved and is currently in review for design and construction. If you pass through the area, I'm sure you've seen the construction that's going out there currently. Then stormwater management for this development was subject to the Carver County Watershed Management Organization rules. Comments were addressed with the first edition, and then they include a proposal of capture reuse system to meet the CCWMO requirements. So staff's recommendation tonight includes the conditions you see before you. These are also in the attached approving resolution for the proposal. And then here are some additional standards as well. And the sample motion for you tonight is a motion to approve the final plat for Hunters Brook Second Edition on all conditions presented and discussed being.
Thank you, Mr. McCann.
Staff is available for questions, and there are a couple members of the development team in the audience as well.
Awesome, terrific. Thank you, Mr. McCann. Council, questions?
Did we get inset B corrected of the misspelling of scenic loop?
Yes, that will be addressed at a future revision. So right now they are in the process of providing revised plans to staff, and that was the noted revisions that were passed along to them this morning. So
Thank you.
Anything else, Councilmember Umansky? Okay. Council, anything else? All right, seeing nothing, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the final plat for Hunters Brook Second Edition upon all conditions presented and discussed being met.
We have a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. There are no more items on our regular agenda this evening, so we'll move on to reports and emerging issues. Attorney Bose,
Mayor and Council, I'm all out of words for tonight.
you earned your keep. Thank you. Ms. Hardy, anything from staff?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, members of the council, just wanted to quickly note that Jen and I were just exchanging a couple notes back and forth as we were both digging for information on the questions that were raised earlier. And we'll just note that we will, even though you've approved it, we will certainly circle back and provide you with some of that information just so you understand how things got approved. It just, with the Brooksmore plat itself, like the whole additions and how we did that, that's something we did all together. So this was kind of a goofy one to begin with. And as they've come through with different phases where we've corrected and done different things, it's something that we've said we're not going to do anymore because it's way too confusing. There's too many moving parts. And then you couple that in there with the turnover. We had Marty work on this way back when. So this has gone through Marty, Isaac, Nathan, some people on Kara's team that are no longer at Focus, as well as Brian and Jen. So we've had a lot of people kind of pass the baton on this. So things are, I'm certain the things are all in the staff reports. We just need to go back and pull that information so we can provide a response that just closes the loop on that. And we will do that at a future meeting here for you.
That will be very helpful. Thank you. Anything else, Ms. Hardy?
Nothing else from staff.
All right, council, any reports from council members this evening? Councilmember Reif.
Yeah, just a shout out, great farmer's market. Caught the tail end of it my wife and I did last week. Excellent job by Anki and the city representation. It was great vegetables too. I thought they'd be gone by the time we got there, but we found some. So excellent turnout. So it's in good hands, I think.
Indeed. Thank you. Anything else? Yeah, Councilmember Roberts.
I just was wondering, can we have a timeline on, we have the trails that are being built right on Bavaria and on 43rd or
Greencrest.
Yes, Greencrest. Yeah,
Sidewalk.
like when are those supposed to be complete?
Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Roberts, I'm going to attempt to try to answer it, and then I might pass the baton over to our city engineer, but we've had some conversations about this. So those two projects were bid as part of the larger project with Tiger Lake Lane. They have a longer time and extension. We've authorized them to get that work done. So there are this is part of, so Green Cross, Bavaria, Starker Lake Lane is all part of one big project. So you might see nothing happening along Bavaria for a while, and it might raise some questions. But anyways, they rest assured they're working on it. It's going to be done soonish. Soonish. There's not an exact firm date on that, but they have been in contact with our team and stay in contact with the team, and we're keeping that pressure on them too.
Okay, good. So we'll have an opportunity to get an update on that at our next meeting. All right, terrific. Anything else, Councilmember Roberts? Councilmember Remansky?
Nothing from me, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Gunderson? All right. Seeing no more items to come before the body this evening, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
We have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned.